There are three ways that the SEC uses, three essential ways it uses the tremendous amount of data that it gets. One is to monitor risk in the industry that it looks at, the markets and industries that it's looking at. Two is investigations and examinations of entities in its world. And three, perhaps most importantly in my time, it uses data to look at rulemakings and judge the economic impact of rulemakings that it's undertaking. That last piece is required by statute of the SEC, which is actually unusual among federal agencies. Most of the federal agencies are not required to look at the economic effects of their rulemakings. So I'm talking a little bit about some of the issues the SEC had in the crisis in all three of these areas, and then discuss some of the efforts to improve the SEC's data efforts in these areas. And although significant improvement has been made since the crisis, serious issues do remain with the use of data at the Commission. And then lastly, I'm going to discuss some new efforts by the SEC to gather more data, including a bunch of proposals that the SEC announced in December to be able to get better data and better exploit that data. And in particular, this talk is incredibly well timed because tomorrow at 10 a.m. in Washington, the SEC is holding an open meeting to consider a whole raft of new data to collect, primarily from the investment management industry. And so I'm very interested to see what happens tomorrow as far as whether that's approved and what kind of data the SEC gets from the industry. If it comes out the way I hope, I think that that data could dramatically change the way the SEC looks at mutual fund portfolio holdings and advisor information in order to monitor asset management activity in the United States. The use of data for the exam function was obviously a critical piece that we worked on while we were there, in particular because you had massive Ponzi schemes run by Bernard Madoff and Alan Stanford, and you had the SEC unable to find those massive Ponzi schemes despite numerous on-site examinations at those firms. So one of the things that happened at the SEC in the exam area was to form a new Office of Risk Assessment and Surveillance to try to bring together a lot of the data that was in the Commission about firms and see if that data could be used to select firms for examinations. That effort, I will argue, has been a success in making the selection of examination candidates better and more data-based. Unfortunately, before the crisis, the outcome of these exams was rarely used for data across the whole agency. So they've gotten better at selecting exam candidates and also better at sharing the information from the exams. One of the real problems prior to the crisis was that examiners would go out, they would examine Bernard Madoff's firm, Alan Stanford's firm. They would write up a long text paper report, and they would promptly drop it in a file at the local office that was doing an examination. In, let's say, Alan Stanford's case, a local file in Fort Worth, Texas, right? A paper copy in a file in Fort Worth, Texas is not going to do much to, enhance knowledge across the country about what's happening, nor does it give anyone a chance to look and see what's going on in other areas. So one of the improvements the SEC has made since the crisis was to put those reports into an electronic format so that they can be shared across the entire country.